Welcome to Suddenly Different, where we explore stories and strategies for life when it doesn't go to plan. I'm Leigh-Anne Charland, inviting you to join me on this journey. There is a particular kind of heartbreak in doing the thing you believed would save you and discovering that you're still in pain. More than 25 years ago, Kerisma Vere achieved abstinence for the first time, and for many years life appeared to be okay until the reasons she needed those substances in the first place began to return. Not because she had failed, not because those years of recovery meant nothing, but because beneath the behaviour was a history that had not yet felt safe enough to be fully seen. Kerisma described what followed as both a breakdown and a breakthrough. But those words can make transformation sound cleaner than it is. They do not tell us what it feels like when the way we have learned to survive stops working, when independence begins to reveal itself as protection, when the voice we believe is keeping us accountable is actually keeping us ashamed, or when returning to treatment feels less like starting again and more like finally reaching the part of ourselves we could not reach the first time. Kerisma's healing did not happen through one revelation. It happened through being met differently, through people who did not demand that she changed faster, through trauma-informed support that gave her something many of us take for granted, the experience of having choices, of knowing her voice mattered, and of learning that healing did not have to hurt her in order to work. So Kerisma has created a relationship with herself and is honest and true about what happens, and has received so much training during that time that is able to be a fair income holistic wellness coach. She knows how it feels. She's done the tough stuff, and she knows that she can truly help people because she's been helped. So Kerisma is a holistic wellness coach, the founder of Towards Wellness Coaching, and the author of The Light Switch Myth. But this book was not written from the safe distance of having everything resolved. It was written by a woman, Kerisma, who still notices the old patterns and has learned that noticing them is not failure. It is the moment another choice may become possible. Thank you, Kerisma, for coming on Suddenly Different and sharing your journey with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Leigh-Anne. That was a very beautiful introduction. It's like, oh my goodness, she's talking about me. That's in my heart.
Yes. Well, how often do people see us truly? Right?
It's very true. I was actually just writing doing some journaling and kind of looking at one of those relationships with the people that really helped me, and kind of like, now that the relationship's been over for a few months, there's so much to look at. Like, what are the gifts that I was left with? What did I really actually learn and get to take away from that relationship? Because I think, when meaningful relationships with people who really helped us, when they come to their natural conclusion or any kind of conclusion, it's like the grief of it all can kind of like blindside us for a little bit before things start to settle. And then, for me to be sort of coming up for air and going, oh, okay, wow, all right. Like, one of the amazing revelations, I've taken a week off this week, and one of the amazing kinds of things, kind of further to what you're saying, is just like realizing that for the first time since that breakdown in 2018, that I'm okay. It's like I've had my head down. I've been working hard. I've been like not to the perfectionism and not in all the ways I actually talk about in the book and stuff, but just, plugging away and just trying to, because I was trying to get my head back above water. I was trying to heal and be okay and move out of survival and stuff like that. And there's always different layers of it, but I was just realizing, like, wow, hey, I could breathe, like I I've done this amazing amount of work. I have gotten myself back to a place of stabilization, but I'm in the world very differently. I think the foundations that I have built for myself are actually way less problematic than the ones that I had in the past, and I'm actually just sort of been taking this week to go like, okay, all right, so we're here, we've built this boat we've built this boat on the ocean, and it's just like, and it's a good boat. It's a solid boat. It's not going to sink kind of boat. And where would we like to go? Now that it's not all about just recovering from that breakdown and trying to reestablish a life worth living, it's like I have sort of that ability to breathe a little lighter and to like some choice to realize like, hey, I'm okay. Like, is everything perfect? No, but it's definitely good enough that I can just kind of go, all right, well, where would I like to go? What would I like to do with all of this stuff that I've created in myself and this new way of being in the world? What would I like,
Yeah. Wow. And to be able to look at a recently ended relationship, which often feels very painful, and find the gift, right? Because when you find the gift, you can find the gratitude, and then your energy is raised, right? You can't help but when that gratitude comes, when you can feel the joy of receiving the gift, you lift.
Yes, yes, I was like, it was a teacher. Well, it was all, just be honest, it was my therapist. And I was very upset it ended. And it's like, oh no, what am I going to do? But she had all the confidence in the world in me. And as I moved through the last couple of months and getting to see all the different changes in me and how I am differently in the world. And, I laugh because I get her kind of smiling with it, like, I told you so, like, not just like a very gentle, like, she wouldn't be surprised, but I'm like, huh, I didn't know. Okay. Cause I had my head down. I was working so hard, and it's just like, okay. And that is kind of beautiful because yeah, I think all of us, we want to hold on to people forever, and that actually is very rarely the case, and yeah. So, I mean, I think it is like a double-edged kind of gift. It's just like, okay, well, you came along, you were this incredibly meaningful person in my life that made such a big difference and taught me it's just like amazing things that I get to hold on to. And now you're gone but you're not gone because you're still here inside me in all of these different ways, and helping me be in the world in ways that are truly very different. I was I was recognizing this week. It's just like, well, prior to meeting her, I didn't really ever trust that anybody could really see me or understand me or get me, and I was carrying this pain inside, that it just did not have any hope that anybody was ever going to be able to understand, and she got to be that person, and she really did. And I was thinking, like, regardless of the fact that I didn't want it to end, and regardless of the fact that it still, can make me very sad, or there's still grief that I'm going through about that, it doesn't change the fact that I had that experience. Like, I'm not the same person because I went in there with that pain of never being seen or acknowledged, or having somebody be able to be present for me in that way. And then I've had that experience now. So I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like, I know how to offer it to myself, and I know how to, like, use discernment and other kinds of things to get it in little bits here and there. Is it ever going to be exactly the same as with that person? No, it never is. But it's, I'm not that same person that didn't ever have that experience. I'm now somebody who's had that experience, and can, I even, like, hopefully offer that to other people here and there, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was just thinking. In 2026, right? How many people take the time to truly be present with another person, right? We've got our phones, we've got all our distractions, and we've got, tons of troubles in our own minds. And it's really easy to just not be present with another person. It's easier to be with them but not with them than it is to truly see them and hear them and feel them. And that's a gift that you're able to give to your clients.
Yeah, and it's it's such a beautiful thing too, though, when you can learn how to give it to yourself. Because, I mean, similarly with other people, it's like feelings make us uncomfortable. So, like I understand you're in pain. So, like, I'm either trying to problem solve it, fix it, minimize it, offer you a cookie, whatever. And that's what I learned in that relationship and with myself is that's not actually what we need. We actually just need to hold space for each other. I do internal family systems work, so I've got this little kid in me, right, and she's just holding her breath for this person to come back, right, like. And then it's like, I have to be that adult that says, like, she's not coming back. She's not coming back. But I could do that with love and kindness, and with this new kind of understanding, like, I can't make it better. I can't make it better. And I don't need to talk her out of that part of me out of my feelings or anything like that. I just need to be there. I just need to make space for it. I just need to, like, yeah, okay, hold you while you cry, right? And we'll heal. We'll heal in time, right? That will ease up. And of course, like I see people that I love like that. If they're in the stars and they're in many other kinds. There's many ways, but to like a 3 or 5-year-old, they don't get that. And even me saying like, well, I'm here. It's like, no, this is like, I don't want you. I want her. So it's just like, okay, well, that's a whole skill set to be able to just be with that little kid and say, yeah, I hear you. I get you. Like we're just gonna chill out and we're going to give you time to have your feelings. And I'm not going to try to minimize them or make them go away or solve them with some ice cream or whatever. Not that a little bit of ice cream strategically used is a bad idea, but and that's, so for me, like that first really getting it from somebody else, because I hadn't ever had that experience. But then that's sort of big of the realization this week is, I've been left with this gift that I know how to give it to myself, like, so as I'm going through this and some other things that are going on in my life, I actually have the skill of being here with myself where it's like, I don't need to fix it. I don't need to get rid of it. I don't need to judge it. I don't need to numb it. I don't need to dissociate it from it. I can just actually be with it, which isn't all it's cracked up to be when you're in it.
Yeah. But the fact that like the fact that all of the things that you could do instead of, and yet you still choose to be in it. Right? And that you can, there's so many different ways that we can stop experiencing the pain that we're having.
Yeah. And, I think, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of the world is just, we didn't get seen and heard and acknowledged, and there wasn't room or freedom for our feelings and stuff like that. And so I think when we do run into people that can just really hold space for us like that and meet us where we are, not who we used to be, not who we want to be, and just like hold space and just be there without, trying to change it or anything, just like be there with you. It's this quite amazing experience, right? I mean, yeah. I know when it first, with me, like I could handle all of like 30 seconds of it and then it would make me uncomfortable. So I would try to change the topic, right? But because it's like, oh, wow, like, cause it hits hard, right? But yeah. I just I can see the little kid in everybody and it's just like, oh, wow, like you see me, you and you can just be here with me in this. Wow. That's powerful, right?
Yeah. And I was just thinking about like children today learning that their parents are so busy. Parenting's not easy. It's not easy. Life is hard. Most households need 2 incomes, so people are working full time. And children have devices, so there's so much disconnection. It'll be very interesting to see how those children are as adults. But I also know that in schools, they're trying to teach children how to feel, how to understand their feelings, how to understand how to cope with big feelings. And so it's great that something's happening in education, but it would be...
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole term, social emotional learning, right? And I actually, my latest book, Kerisma and the Fireflies, is because I work with a lot of adults who've not had permission to feel their feelings their whole lives, right? And there's been a suppression and a disconnection from their feelings, right? So then as an adult, that becomes very problematic because it comes out in our lives in substance use, in toxic relationships or codependent relationships. And it even comes out in negative health results. So the book is created as a social emotional resource to help kids sort of recognize that it's okay to have big feelings and that it's okay to, it's okay to cry, and that even expressing your feelings can actually lead to something beautiful, right? When in the book, her tears turned to fireflies. And that is like, it came from me working with my own inner child, but this idea that, like we kind of learn to avoid and suppress our feelings and almost demonize them, right? But then, so the book was kind of created to help the parents out there that are wanting to teach their kids that it's okay to cry. Cause I think, even kids, we don't want to bother anybody, and we don't want to, and so it's like, hey, guess what? Like, your tears, they could turn into fireflies and they could light up your whole room. And, so I just thought, well, working with adults and even, myself, of trying to get these messages across that, like, hey, feelings are actually like a gift. And yeah, they're really difficult, but like, it's so true that, the way the fireflies brought light into her room, into the darkness, that's what feeling our feelings actually do. I was saying, like, the irony of the last 8 years of therapy was that we did all this work for me to reconnect to my heart and to feel things at a much deeper level. So when it ended, I got to feel that full force. But you know what? I wouldn't trade it. I would not trade the depth at which I have felt the grief and loss for that gift of having been able to reconnect to my heart.
Oh, that's so special. So special. So let's go back. This podcast is called Suddenly Different, and you had a major experience where you describe it as a breakdown and a breakthrough. Can you take us into that moment or that season of life when your life became suddenly different?
Sure. I went off work because I was a union president, and I was I'd been scoring off the charts on the burnout scales for a long time or whatever. And anyway, I was just going to take 2 weeks off, and I was very important, and I was very needed. And it actually took me like, several weeks to get everything organized for me to be able to take time off. Right. And then, so as soon as I got home, the first night I was off, I started having memories of a sexual assault that I had lived through when I was younger. And I was like, maybe, clearly my body has been waiting for me to have a chance, so maybe I should look at this. Maybe this would be a good time to do it. And I hadn't cried in 20 years. So I also thought maybe that was problematic and I should look at that. So I was doing a lot of work, and my wife at the time was not really supportive, and she has a very strong work ethic, and you go to work no matter what, right? So she was trying to be supportive, but just losing her stuff because it really went against what she was. So, but I was doing a lot of journaling. I was doing a lot of work on myself. And anyway, the marriage ended up ending. She just couldn't handle it, and the marriage ended. So that was sort of like but I had really started to develop a relationship with myself. I was learning who I was, and I was like moving away from being codependent and learning how to write. And like, she didn't like that. And that really surprised me because I thought, well, here I'm getting healthier and, and everything. And it's like, and I had meant my vows and stuff. So it was upsetting, but I was determined. I thought, I had started getting fit. I'd lost 80 pounds. I had met this woman and I was helping her with her business, Dynamic Awakening. And I was her business partner. And like, well, first she made me her business partner and we signed papers and everything. And then she kind of backed out of it. And then she agreed to let me be a coach, and she had 2 kids. And after my marriage ended, I went and lived with them just as friends, but helping her run the business and taking care of the 4 and the 6-year-old. Well, it all blew up, and the relational trauma just like hit me really hard, right? We were a mess. I was letting her doing trauma therapy with me, which was, I was getting a good deal, but bad idea. And So I understand the decisions that went into that and why that was a bad idea. But we were very enmeshed, right? Everything but romantic. And so anyway, it blew up. And I was at the time I had lost about 80 pounds. I had turned vegan, which I'd always wanted to do because I never agreed with eating meat. I had a thriving coaching business. I had like, I don't know, 10 to 15 clients and was helping them all improve their relationships with themselves. And I had 14 years clean. And, I really thought that I was just at the top of things. I just thought, well, I thought that I had tapped my way through all the traumas, and I thought that I had dealt with it all and that it was really my time to enjoy life, right? But what I didn't realize was that my sense of success and my sense of self-worth were so tied up into what I was doing, right? Like all those metrics that I just described, my sense of self was really tied up into that. So the first kick was when it blew up with my friend, and she pulled the kids right out of my life, just like that. And that was so painful. I couldn't even look at it, but I kept going. So my body was shutting down. So I would curl up in like these shaking, panic, stuttering attacks. And I'd do that for 20 or 30 minutes. And then I would get up and I would be like, okay, I got to positively manifest a new place to live. Right. Cause I do believe that if you think there's nothing out there, you're going to find nothing. Whereas if you just forget about the statistics, just really picture what it is that you want. Like you got to do it wholeheartedly, right? So I was trying to do that, and did actually kind of manage to do that a little bit. And I'd go down to the gym and I had friends that were telling me like, you need to go on medication. And I was like, no, I'm just going to like keep doing the exercise, keep eating right. But I wasn't really eating right. I was really kidding myself about that. I was living off of protein powder. And anyway, I was all the trauma was coming back, but I didn't really realize it. So it's like having got like somebody put glasses on, and I was starting to see things through the lens of when I was younger, and I didn't even notice that happening. And then I started dating this woman, and the first week was really good. And then after that, she was like such a narcissist, and she was really mean and dismissive and all these things. And it really mimicked my brother and other aspects of my family of origin. Right. So it was so like my kryptonite, because rather than responding as my adult self who has boundaries and like, hey, I'm out of here, I'm not going to let you treat me like that kind of thing, I was just like getting smaller and quieter and just getting more and more unwell. And then I had friends in the program, and they were like, you can't be with her. And I was like, oh, it's fine. And the lenses on me, I started perceiving rejection. I had a few falling out. I no longer felt part of NA or anything like that because it was just, my world was getting smaller and smaller. And a couple of weeks before it was going to end with my girlfriend, I'd already lost all of my friends and everything. I had gotten bed bugs the about 4 or 5 months earlier, and I started smoking cigarettes again because I was just like, I need to do something, because it was just that one straw over the edge of what I could handle, and I was actually very phobic. So started smoking cigarettes. Well, as a health and wellness coach, smoking cigarettes doesn't really work very well, right? So there was a conflict there. And then also the boot camps and the other stuff that I was going to, like cardio and smoking, you can do it, but it's not a lot of fun, right? So that was taking a dive, and ethically I let the clients that I still had left go, because I could tell that I was deteriorating, and I didn't think I was in a space anymore I really believe in do no harm. So I was just like, okay, I can't be doing this right now. So everything fell. And then I did actually try a couple more times, but like the program, you're supposed to kind of reach out, and I was reaching out. Nobody was getting it. Nobody was answering or responding to me. And I hung in there another couple of months, but when I knew it was about to end with my girlfriend, like I knew, it's just like, this is just a matter of time. And so I decided that I would drink again, right? Because in my past, it's like drinking's, because I had these trauma visions, and it was just like endless time. She was going to be gone. Everybody in my life was going to be gone. Everything was going to be gone. And it was just like this endless amount of time in front of me. And I didn't know how to cope with it. I was just like, the trauma vision was so bad. And so I thought I will drink. Well, of course, while I'm on my way out the door to go get some beer, I realized like, well, in the last 14 years, they've actually opened up pot stores, right? Like this is legal now, right? So a quick Google, oh, look, there's 3 near my house. Well, we might as well grab that while but I'm a little bit different. I had a 14-year medallion. And before I left the house, I looked in the mirror. I said, like, I love you. Nobody's ever going to take that away from you. We just did 14 years, absolutely clean of all substances. And I kissed the medallion and I said, I'm going to do something else right now because I need to, right? But I took that moment to just be grateful to myself. And then, yeah, I used a little bit of wisdom. I kept it to soft drugs and soft alcohol, but I was self-medicating nonstop. And, the people, my girlfriend and her friend, they were like shocked, right? And I was like, no, it's all good. It's all good. I just decided I would drink again. It's not, and so it just, and sure enough, we broke up a couple of weeks later, but we were breaking up at my house and this little part of me came up and I was losing it inside. Leigh-Anne, I was like losing it because I was about to get down and just start begging and crying, like, please don't leave me kind of thing. And this was not the kind of person you want to do that with because I know she would just sort of stand over me, like, and just be all condescending and terrible. So I was like, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Do not do that no matter what you do. So I got her to take me to the hospital, which I'd never done. And I also sort of had a hunch one of the medications I was on was not doing me any favors. So I hadn't been able to find a psychiatrist. So I'd go to the hospital, but it's 5 days in the emergency room with them out treating me at all. By the time that was done, I was fairly much more messed up and fairly catatonic. I came home for a couple of days. I went back to the hospital, this time determined to get in. It was like another 6 days in the emergency room, not getting any kind of help. And then I did go stay somewhere for 2 weeks. But like by that time it was really like a brain injury. It really was. I was catatonic. I had severe amnesia. I mean, I knew my name, and I knew this was a ham, but I didn't know how to cook. I couldn't remember any of my life experiences. I didn't have any access to my own agency or resources or things I had lived through or anything like that. So I felt like I was just floating in space and I was pretty much, I was in a state of panic, like a panic attack, not a 20-minute one, but like a 24/7. That was about a year and a half, but I did meet my therapist shortly after that. And she was working in an addictions place, but she started treating me for trauma like immediately, and and I went to the groups, and I was lucky that the mental health addiction services that I was going to, they really understood the correlation between mental health and addiction. And they actually thought substance use was part of the mental health. Right. So they helped me learn about the cognitive distortions that were going on because that was making everything so much worse. So I couldn't even apply anything to the substance use for a couple of years, but I was applying it to my mental health, and I just started to get like a little bit better and a little bit better. And COVID was horrible because when I was alone, the panic was like, at a 50 out of 10, so I just needed to be around people. And those weren't always the best people that I was around, but I made do. But I just kept going to therapy. I kept going to groups. I kept just doing things. But all the old ways were just, like what I learned was that when you're already struggling and you have all this stuff, you add layers and you make it harder. You make it worse. Right.
Yeah.
So what I kind of learned to do first was just not to make it worse. Like it's already bad. Let's just not make it worse. And then from there, I actually started to learn some techniques and stuff to just make it a little bit easier. And nothing stops difficult things from happening. That doesn't exist, right? We can fool ourselves into thinking, but it doesn't. But we can learn how we are with ourselves, how we respond to ourselves, how we care for ourselves. Like we can either exasperate a situation or we can actually help ourselves get through it, and I had spent my life you walk along, you fall in a hole. And I would stand at the edge of the hole going, well, you fell in the hole. Yeah, you did it, didn't you? Right? What are you going to do now? And it's like, and I learned how to like be the person that comes along. It's like, oh, you fell in the hole again. Oh, bye. I bet you feel really terrible. How can I help? Here's a hand. Let me help you get up out of there. Let's figure out what happened and make a plan to try to help you like not do that, but real empathy for myself in struggles as opposed to this harsh criticalness. And even I still remember looking out the window at my farm, and because I've been hearing all this stuff about Kristen Neff and Brene Brown and all this stuff about compassion, right? And apparently it was supposed to be more of a motivator than cracking the whip or discipline or pressure or setting the bar high. And I was just like, I don't know. But my way, there was at that point probably been 4 or 5 years of working really hard at simple things like just eating once a day or brushing my teeth or, like smoking 2 less cigarettes or 2 less joints or 2 less beer or what. Like I'd been working at these very basic kind of things, just trying, and I wasn't really getting anywhere, and I was constantly feeling shame and guilt and all these kinds of things. So I actually thought, well, fine, I will try this compassion thing. I will give it a shot. We'll see how this works. But I do, like, it was a bit of an experiment, but sure enough, like within a rather short amount of time, I noticed that change was happening quicker, and it was like actually a little bit more enjoyable. And the difficult things that I was going through, it wasn't that I wasn't going through them, but I was getting through them different, like, again, that's such a hard thing to explain because it doesn't make the pain or the struggles or any of that go away, but it's just, you go through them differently in a way that's just like a little bit easier than all the other ways. Right. So I was like, oh, all right, this works.
So I'm really curious because of course we all experience life and the world and the way we manage ourselves differently, right? And we all think that everyone else does it the same way, right? And they don't. So how does giving yourself compassion look, feel, sound, whatever? Like how do you know you're giving yourself compassion?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I have some tells, right? Like one of the things I learned in the journey is that, so my critic has always tried to do right by me. It really has. It's wanted the best for me, right? But its method is questionable, problematic, right? But it kept a roof over my head, and it kept it did a lot of good, right? But I just, it's painful to me to talk to myself and treat myself that way. There's layers to it that they're just like, they're just ghosts of how other people treated me, and I don't want to. So I can really acknowledge the critic. But one of the big observations I have is the critic, and anybody's critic, I think, it takes things out of context, right? Like if you didn't go to the gym, it's because you're lazy, right? Or if you slept in, it's because you're lazy, right? Or if you're big, it's because you don't care about you. Like it's just, there's these labels and these assumptions and these judgments, and there's no context to them, right? Whereas the compassion for me is like, there's context. It's like, so like I like to talk about compassion with accountability because compassion doesn't mean not holding ourselves accountable, but it means doing so in a kind, loving way with context, right? So say, for example, I wanted to go to the gym this morning, but I didn't go to the gym this morning, right? The critic is just going to come in and just kind of be, oh yeah, sure. You said you would, you didn't, right? You're messing up again, but the compassion is going to go like, what happened? Right? Like, I know you don't feel really good right now because that was really important for you to do. So what happened? It's like, oh, well, I didn't get a good night's sleep because I was having nightmares, right? And then the phone rang as soon as I got up, and there was that kind of that upsetting phone call. By the time I was done with that phone call, I really just didn't have very much energy. So I didn't want to go. So it's like taking it in. So then the accountability is like, the compassionate accountability is like, that part is that we don't ignore that these things are important to us. There's a difference between making excuses and listening to what the real reasons are. And when you listen to what the real reasons are, you can come in there as a friend and kind of help problem solve. Like, okay, well, like tonight, let's go to bed a little bit earlier, right? Let's turn the phone off. Let's not even look at the phone. Let's put the gym clothes at the foot of our bed. And like, as soon as we get up, we'll grab our water, we'll head to the gym, and we'll get that done. right? And then we can deal with everything that comes after. And that's, again, we have to be realistic because that's not always possible, right? Maybe that today was the only opportunity I had all week and I have to actually be patient with myself to next week, right? Or maybe the solution is like, oh, you didn't go to the gym this morning, but I know this movement thing is very important to you for these reasons and stuff, like your values, not because you're not good enough, but because these things are important to me. What if do you think we could fit a walk in after dinner? Or maybe just while we're cooking dinner, we can just do laps around the kitchen, right? Like there's so many ways to problem solve a situation if we're meeting ourselves where we're at without judgment and taking context and being realistic about it. But that compassion still connects to the things that are important to us, right? And we can still be very realistic with ourselves. And it doesn't mean like, this week I've been eating muffins in the middle of the night. I got all these muffins, these chocolate muffins, and I've been staying at a hotel, and it's just like I get up in the middle of the night. I've been a little bit hungry. I've been eating a chocolate. Now that behavior is a behavior I don't want to have because it comes with costs and consequences. I have some insulin resistance. I'm trying to lose weight. I've got these different goals. So, but I don't have to beat myself up about it. I can come and go like, hey, I know you're actually really dealing with some stuff right now and you're really struggling. And it seems that this is a behavior that it's coming out in. So I tell you what, like, let's try not to do that. I'm going to continue to try to make space and find other ways to help you meet those needs or express those feelings or comfort you and be there for you, so that we're not doing that one, because that has costs and consequences. So compassion doesn't mean we lie to ourselves about the consequences, but we don't have to scare ourselves. We don't have to beat ourselves up. We don't have to judge ourselves. We don't have to call ourselves names. We don't have to do any of that, which, all that does is just make us feel smaller and heavier and sort of drain our hope, which lowers our capacity, our agency, and then which actually sort of creates the cycle of making it, harder to do the things that are important to us, right? Whereas the coming in with that compassion, it's really, it's support, right? But it's not dishonest support. It's not, like, oh, well, let's ignore the fact that, that's going to have a really detrimental consequence if that's the choice you make. But if it is the choice you make, then like, hey, let's look at that together and try to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that is really, really helpful, right? That is like, it's sort of like an objective process, an honest process, still private, but not putting your head in the sand, right? So ignoring. I know I'm having a relationship with chocolate at the moment, and it's something to do with my insulin, my blood sugar and everything. So but I haven't worked out. I can see now that I've been using my critic to manage the situation instead of looking at it and going, okay, so why am I doing it?
Curiosity is our friend, boy.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. And it's curiosity and patience. There's actually kind of rare qualities in a sense. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to develop them. But when something happens now, I actually tend to, this is what I mean I was saying, it's like these things that used to be automatic, the judgment, all those kinds of things, they were so automatic. And now like I can, when you ask me, what does this look like? My automatic responses are actually to be curious and to be a little patient, right? Like, okay, all right, muffins at midnight, not a good idea. Let's be patient. Let's actually, okay, what's going on? That's the curiosity, and not a manipulative kind of curiosity. And the patience, it's like, all right, okay, this is not ideal. Let's change this, right? If I was sticking my finger in the light socket, I wouldn't want to be as patient with that.
No, there are some things that are far too dangerous to be really patient with.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, you are a great storyteller. You're so aware and generous with sharing your information. Tell me what it was like when you started writing a book. What was that process with the writing of the book? Did it start as a book?
Yeah, that one did. I had been writing emails again to my therapist was above and beyond anybody you would ever meet, but she part of my healing was I was allowed to email, and I used it for all kinds of things, probably way beyond what she was expecting. But I'm just like, right. So I already had the writing was a part of how I healed. It was part of how I came back to myself. It was part of how I found myself. And it was also part of that being seen and heard, because my story had always been very compartmentalized, right? And the writing, one, it helped me cope. It was an alternative to numbing, but it also was, for the first time in my life, I actually got to share my entire story with another human being, right?
Yeah.
And that took several years of writing. But so I already had the logistics of writing down, right? And I was back coaching for a couple of years, and I've always coached with metaphors. I think we have constructs. We grow up with constructs, which are those bigger ideas of things. We put different things together, and we all have constructs of what change looks like, right? Or healing or whatever. So I always talk to clients in metaphors, because I feel like metaphors can help us challenge and replace those constructs more than like just a word or a sentence or an example can be. So the light switch myth is a metaphor. Well, I guess it's a construct too, that I've been using for a really long time. I used it in the first go round of my coaching, and then I had been using it again. And I even when I work with highly functioning people, it's like they might have very realistic expectations and healthy behaviors around change in many areas of their lives, but there's always one or two places where it's like they set the bar really high. They're in that success failure kind of perfectionism zone or whatever. So anyway, I was just like, I came home after sharing the metaphor again about how change is not like a light switch, and this has been my experience. Like, hey, okay, that patience, that curiosity, that the fact that, like it's not linear. We're gonna double back sometimes to learn things that we didn't learn the first time, right? Or we might need to take a rest, or like little tiny steps are actually gonna allow our nervous system to catch up to what we're doing, as opposed to the giant leaps. I would always giant leap and then fall all the way back down to the bottom.
yeah.
I could maintain it for a little while, but then there I would go again, right? This is like, okay, well, what if because I laughed, I was like, run really hard at the wall and jump over it. And I would kind of do it, kind of get to the top, then I'd fall back. A lot of the times with the dissociation, it would be like an electric fence, and I would go flying back 20 feet. I would forget what I had been doing. And then eventually I'd remember what I'd be doing, and I'd do it the exact same way, and I'd get the exact same. So one day I was like, I wonder if I walked up to the wall very slowly, and I created little steps, and I tried to get over the wall that way, if that would work. And it did, right? So anyway, that was the idea of the book. I have very strong English skills. I remember all the English classes I took, even in elementary and high school, and I love them, and I wrote stories when I was younger. So like I knew the concept of an outline, right? Like that's, any story has to start with an outline. Right. So I came home and I wrote the outline, which is actually only the first half of the book. Chapters, I think it's 1 to 9. I think there's 9 chapters. Yeah. So I wrote that's what I thought it needed to have. I had my outline, and then I filled it in. And then I spent the next couple of months waking up at 2:00 in the morning going, it has to have this. It has to have this. That was just like my creative side was pulling from all the different things of resources I wanted it to include, because I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to just be a tell you what to do kind of book. I didn't want it. I wanted it to be like, hey, this is kind of like, what worked for me, how I've done it. But then I also wanted to include a lot of resources that I have vetted, right? Like that align with the concepts that I was talking about in the book. So, and then, with assistive technologies, like all the spell checks and I didn't use AI to write the book, but I used AI to remind me how to use word process, to use Microsoft Word. Because I was like, how do I populate a table of contents? Or, back in the day, I probably would have taken me a year to research how to publish a book independently, right? Whereas I was able to use AI to like tell me, okay, so you're going to need this font size, you're going to need this kind of a manuscript, you're going to need this is what you do. And it walked me through all the different platforms that I needed to know how to use to be able to launch it, right? So that I streamlined an awful lot of the administrative stuff, right? Whereas keeping the what's it called? The all the ideas, the creativity, the writing, and that's all mine, right? I just used AI as an assistant to get it done quicker, right? So I actually have very strong ethics and beliefs about that. Is just like, because AI is here, and I don't think it's going away, and
No.
I think we can use it responsibly. And I'm a little annoyed sometimes with people right now because it's such a polarized issue, and people. It's like, again, don't judge a book by its cover. Like, maybe you should ask how it was used instead of just, yeah. So there's a lot going on around that. So.
Well, I know with me, because I've got brain injury from the vaccine injury, I have no consistency with my ability to find words or my construction of sentences. So if I hadn't have started using AI to help me just over a year ago, that was when I had enough cognitive availability to try. So I'd been 3 years not being able to try. Then I tried, and so I collaborate with it. It's my ideas.
Exactly. It's your intellectual property. And
so it's all my ideas.
Streamline the process, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's helping me, because with my disability, I wouldn't be able to do it. But there's a difference between stealing someone else's intellectual property, right? I mean, I've similar to you, I've spent since my mid-20s, I've been going to personal development courses. I've done Silver Mind Control, Tony Robbins, all sorts of different things, Reiki, all sorts of different things, right? So I've got lots and lots of knowledge about alternative ways of doing things that a lot of people don't have. But remembering those for me is a little hard. So similar to your catatonic state, there's a bit of, there's a bit of amnesia there. Once I have a visualization that I do that helps me remap my brain. Like I know it's not how the brain works physically, but I just imagine that I'm going down different roads to try and find a new way past the detour, to find the information I know's there, but I don't know what it is.
No, in my psychology class that I'm taking right now, I'm studying for a midterm on Tuesday, and we're covering all of this. One, I think maybe we're talking about Broca's area of your brain with some of the things that you're describing. And then two, what you're talking about is mind mapping, and also the power of visualization is also what you're talking about, because when it's been proven empirically researched that when we can visualize things, and you're visualizing getting beyond that path, right? Like that it can help us physically heal, and it can help us psychologically heal, right? So, and then there's the neuroplasticity of the brain, which you're like literally taking new neurons, and if the old receptors are not working for you anymore, you're developing new ones to create those new pathways to do what you used to do a different, you used to do it one way, but now you're learning to do it other ways, right? Like that's all, that all ties in.
It's all that conscious way. And once I had enough energy, because the battery in my mitochondria, like my battery wouldn't hold charge. So I would go from fully charged to empty in a moment.
Yeah. Right? I can relate to
with
that.
With the chronic, right? So I had to learn first, or find ways to help charge the mitochondria. But I forget, just like you forget. I forget all the knowledge that I have, and I have some days where I feel hopeless and helpless. And then I remember that I have resources. And if I don't have the resource at hand, I've got people like you who come into my life that remind me that I have resources at hand, right? That I have the resources in me and I have access to your resources too.
Yeah, I'm having that kind of an experience these days too, right? And it's kind of it's definitely kind of cool. It's too, it's interesting because we have these perceptions of our limitations, right? And then
Yeah.
when you start to find ways past them, it can really open up your eyes, and you can realize that, that you weren't necessarily limited by the external resources themselves. You're probably just as much limited by your perspective of what was available or possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
and
it's a
if you
fine
don't know
balance
it's
of
possible,
both, right? Yeah.
yeah. If you don't know it's possible, then you can't know to look for it, right? So it's sort of that possibility that's where, I love being present with people and having the possibility of seeing what they experience life as. So
Yeah.
then I can share that, right? And I can remember it. So
Yeah, I work with a lot of people that don't know, and I've been there. I've been that person who
yeah,
didn't know.
yeah,
I didn't know this stuff was possible, or I thought it had to be way more difficult than it is. And what I say about things is like it takes practice, it takes time, it takes perseverance and commitment, but it's not. It doesn't have to be as impossible or difficult as you thought it was, right? But because
yeah,
that's kind of like the catchphrase of the book, right? Is it's like, you're not broken. It's your approach. It's
yeah,
your
yeah,
approach to change that is not doing you any favors, right? So like,
yeah,
let's look at this. Let's look where it comes from, and maybe, let's become willing. I have a client right now, and it's hilarious because she reminds me a lot of me, and it's like, I was actually, because I do a lot of different kinds of coaching. So we're working on developing a new relationship towards food, right?
yeah,
And she was really struggling to lose weight. And, I come in here and I'm like, I want you to eat more, right? I
yeah,
give her like a bigger thing because I understood that a lot of what was going on, the plateau and everything was about restriction, right? And that the demonizing food and all the rest of that was creating these different problems. So like, it was hilarious because she like, you'd be crazy, right? And I was like, the first person who told me that, I'd be like, you'd be crazy, but I did it, right? And I love
yeah,
this client because she's like doing it, and it's having the same kind of effect. And she's actually learning how to feed herself with care and see food in a different way and have this different relationship to it that is going to be like so sustainable. And we had a meeting about as whether, are we gonna do this for a second month or not, right? And she's like, well, I want to lose 20 pounds, but I don't want it to take 5 months, right? And I'm
yeah,
like, well, you're welcome to go do any of those other ones that you've been trying your whole life, because I can't guarantee you that. I don't know how long it'll take, right? Reasonably, it's probably going to take at least 5 months, right? And I can't guarantee what your body is or isn't going to do, how long it's going to take to like stabilize and start to operate the way that's supposed to. I said, so, you're welcome to go do that. And it's like, she thought about it and she's like, all right, I'll keep doing this. I keep doing it. But then I've watched her own patience and compassion and understanding like really, really grow. She's not just saying it, she's actually implementing it. She's actually embracing the ideas. And I think a lot of us that when we've been trying things, ways that don't work, we find a different kind of willingness, right? And it might be a little bit, begrudgingly or like, but when we can find that willingness, and that was one of the gifts of the breakdown, is because I was 48 and the way I had done things had not worked. All of the things I had tried to accomplish were not there. So I found a whole new level of willingness, of like this humility within myself of like, okay, clearly, clearly the way I've been doing it has not worked. And we need that opened up a willingness to try things a different way that hadn't been there before, because I
yeah.
can be very headstrong.
Well, especially when we think that we got it, right? When we think that we knew the answer, and for a period of time, we seem to be staying on the right road, the straight road, whatever. And then we realize actually we were living unconsciously. We really weren't living a fully fulfilling life. We were
Yeah,
just
I really thought I
unconscious.
was, but like
Yeah.
the you know this, like I said, the sense of self and the sense of success, it was, I had this idea because I felt good about myself because I wasn't using drugs, because I was clean, because I had 14 years clean, and every year that I got another year clean, I felt even better about myself, and I felt good about myself for this and that and the other thing. And my sense of spirituality was really like that things were just going to continue to get better because I was doing all the right things for all the right reasons. So yeah, that really blew up in my face because now I really rely on the fact that it's like, okay, you can do all the right things for all the right reasons and things can still like go turn upside down. And, I'm still developing a new sense of spirituality with myself, but like, I understand now that it's more about our capacity to deal with things. Right. And like, there's a saying, the bird doesn't rely on the branch, the bird relies on its wings, right? But
Yeah.
I think as human beings, where my journey is taking me is that's great that I have wings, but that's still a very independent model, and so my journey is still taking me to resourcing with other people and understanding, like, that the wind, and there's other things there, right? Like, I felt so betrayed when I had my breakdown because I had really believed that, I don't usually use the word God, but I really had believed in recovery that God wouldn't give me any more than I could handle. So
Yeah.
when I was sitting there on the floor, not able to get up, I felt super betrayed because clearly I had been given more than I could handle. But now, 8 years later, that I've learned so many things and I'm still here,
Mm-hmm. He
it
didn't
really
give you
did seem like
anything.
more than I could handle. But,
He,
like,
he, he didn't. You handled it,
there was
right?
things to be learned, and I laugh too because I'm like, I was that person who's just like, this is like, okay, we're bopping you down because you've got things to learn. Nope, get back up. It's like down. It's like, and then until I stayed down, and that was where I found the humility to actually listen and do things like a lot differently. And that, for me, that the biggest part of that was probably the ability to open up to help that had not been there before. Like, I
Yeah.
never let help in at the level that I let it in at that point, And it was pretty funny because I was so open when I first met the person I was working with, and then as I started to get better, all those walls and in
Mm-hmm.
that traumatic independence and all the rest of the questioning and all the rest of it started to come back, and then we had to work from there. But I got broke wide open in a way where there was a vulnerability and an honesty to me and a willingness that just had never been there before. Cause it wasn't, like it just, that had not been safe my whole life, right? Like, that's not
Yeah.
how I could be in the world. So
Yeah. We could talk for hours. We really, really could. You are such a shining example of that creativity and that willingness to try again, right? There are so many choices that we can give up. We can accept mediocrity. We can stay in codependent relationships. We can allow ourselves to be small, but you don't do that. You haven't done that. You've chosen to be bigger than that for you, not for anybody else. Now, as a byproduct, you now are a fantastic coach. You're an author. You are a leader in the community who is able to inspire and motivate, right? So oftentimes we can do one or the other, but it sounds to me as though you have language and method for both. So they can look at you and be inspired and hear your story, and then they can be motivated through your processes to be able to take steps on their own and become truly independent and not fall back, right? We often think we're independent and and then realize that we've actually just gone into our safe behaviors. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing, all of you, today. And I'm sure our listeners will be still listening at this time, wanting to know what it is that, or they won't want to be letting go of this conversation, I think. I think it is really special. Normally I have a really well articulated outro planned, but it doesn't feel right. It feels more that I need to see you absolutely as who you are right now. And thank you for all of your journey and the journey ahead, for the wisdom that you will be able to share with us who may be just on a slightly different path right now and will need to come back into your orbit sometime soon. So thank you, Kerisma, for everything that you've shared today and for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Leigh-Anne. It's truly like, I know a lot of people do things for a lot of different reasons, but I've just been loving meeting people like you and having these conversations. It's just like, it's just so wonderful. It's just like, okay, yes,
Yeah. So, will you take care? I look forward to your next book. And now we're friends on Facebook. I get to see all that you're up to. All right. Will you take care and have a good night?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. This has been Suddenly Different. I'm Leigh-Anne Charland, and I'm so grateful you shared your time with me. If you felt a spark, a tear, or a moment of recognition, I hope you'll pass that gift along by sharing this show. Take a deep breath, trust your path, and I'll meet you back here soon.